Yeah, so hi everyone. So thanks a lot for joining the session. So I'm not sure if you have read the paper yet. So if you have read the paper, that's awesome. So you can join the discussion as well. So I'm going to talk about mainly the Gemini's Google's Gemini paper, which is a sort of a white paper. It's not a, let's say, peer review paper. So the things that's stated in the paper, uh, we have to take it as it is. It's not evaluated by a third party. So that's the only problem I see with the paper. But apart from that, I think it's really interesting paper. Um, yeah. So what we'll cover today basically is like what are Gemini models, uh, Gemini architecture that they've used. Um, so though, as I said, the we have to go by what's provided in the paper. So there are certain sections that we can't like have a lot of information. So it's a bit of a sort of a problem, but we'll try our best to sort of explore what's stated in the paper and like referring to other literature to understand what's how the Gemini was built. And then the training process, training data set, evaluation that they've done on the models, and also they've spoken in depth about responsible deployment. So that's a really interesting section as well. How they've done the deployment responsibly. I think this is a really critical area with AI safety, etc., being sort of brought into front with um, different governments focusing on AI safety. So I think that's it's a really important section. So what are Gemini models? So I think Gemini models, I'm sure you have seen most of the, unless you have read the paper, you have seen at least some of the videos that showing some of the use cases of Gemini models. So it's a set of models created by Google that are trained uh, bottom up in a multimodal nature. So those are not, if you compare it with other models like GPT models, which are uh, like some of them are trained like only text based. So this is like one of the differentiators is like it's trained ground up from multimodal data. So that means you can interact with these models with text, images, and even as audio as well. So so that sort of gives you much more naturalistic interaction with the model as we would interact with another human. So I think that's um, sort of groundbreaking in a way as we move forward with quite a lot of AI tools that we build that we try to integrate with our day-to-day life. So and also they provide three versions of these models. So that's why it's called Gemini family of models. They have Ultra, Pro, Nano. I'll go a bit more into details with those different models. So it's basically different. Ideally, like looking at from a high level, it's how the size of the models, like how we can use in different contexts. For example, Nano is ideally to be used with mobile devices, wearable devices, etc. So accuracy wise is not the best, but still it provides reasonable accuracy for us to use uh, with limited battery and computation resources like wearable devices, where Ultra being the biggest of them all, but it's very expensive. Um, I think still not available publicly. Ultra, I think Pro is available, like probably got available last week or something. So yeah, and also they've done rigorous evaluation against existing benchmarks with academic benchmarks and comparing with also the other models as well. So that's really interesting, and also done human evaluations as well, comparing um, the results that are generated from the same prompt against different models. And in the paper, they've discussed like how this would impact the future of AI interactions, and everything, like different applications, healthcare, education, etc. And one of the really like the first examples that's shown in the paper is this one, which is I think uh, really interesting, where they've taken a sort of a handwritten answer to a question, um, basically physics question that you get probably in O level or maybe beginning of A levels. So they've given this answer and also given the sort of instruction asking whether this it is correct or like if not, like how would you sort of uh, give an answer. So I think if so did the student get the correct answer? If the solution is wrong, please explain what's wrong and solve the problem. um, yeah, yeah, it says latex or maths. I'm not sure its answer has that, but still. So uh, when you have some time, take a look at this. So what it says is basically, so looked at the equation, uh, and the student has taken the wrong sort of equation. So for I think potential energy, it's given by mgh. The student has used, I think, mgl, which is this 80. So that's wrong. So the the model has switched to using h, and 40 used 40 there, and eventually done the calculation and got the correct result. So I think this is interesting, the fact that it's able to identify the read uh, the text through an image, and then reason what's wrong and identify that, and then try to get the answer to rectify what's been done. So I think it's a very cherry picked examples, but still I think it's really interesting uh, to see the potential of this kind of model, especially in the education sector, um, where where we could like sort of get the help of an AI assistant through Gemini, maybe that can help you with, especially students doing A levels, even university level, etc. So yeah, so these are the three models I mentioned earlier. So I've taken screen grabs from the paper itself, so I'm not changing much with what's written in the paper. So yeah, there's model size Ultra, Pro, Nano. So they state that Ultra is the most capable model, and most of the benchmarks that they've tried is with Ultra, and like whatever they say, okay, they, for example, one of the key uh, sort of sort of highlights of their promotion is that they've managed to surpass human benchmarks for MMLU, which is one of the multimodal uh, large multimodal language benchmarks for to test how the multimodal models are working. So it has managed to surpass the human, which was, I think, the human level, expert human level was around 88 something, and then Ultra was at 90 plus. So that's a breakthrough that they have sort of putting out in like a lot of promotional materials. And Pro is what that's been widely available right now, and you can sort of access that through uh, Google, like I think Vertex AI and other sort of Google services that provide these models through an API, so you can access that, and that is generally, I think, cost effective, and as well as performs to a really good level compared to Ultra. And Nano, I think it's still not available. Maybe it is different locations. In the UK, I couldn't find it. So it the target will be for like reduce size 1.8 billion parameters and 3.25 billion parameters, the two versions within Nano, um, which they say it's efficient model with, I think, acceptable level of accuracy for especially on-device sort of calculations with these models. So yeah, it's really interesting to see how they perform. So this is the sort of the architecture diagram that they provided. It's not much; it's very high level, but I think it's really interesting to see that how they've sort of shown that you can integrate like text, audio, images, video in a sequential manner, like through use a transform model, especially decoder side of the transform model, and as the description says, sort of like interleaved sequence of text, image, audio, and video as inputs. So you can sort of, for example, provide like a PDF with images and text and use that to train. So I think I'll talk a bit about this later down the line in the presentation. Um, so you can feed in like all these text-based like text plus images content, and it will be fine for the model because it's sort of inherently multimodal how it's trained. And so yeah, you can then, from a decoder point of view, when you sort of get results, it can be text based or even image based. So you can get tokens that can be converted into images. So that's how the architecture is developed. So the only problem is that this is what they say. So they've given some examples for us to look, but this is the the most explained content that they have on the paper. So we have to take it as it is for now until they provide more details on this report. Um, so yeah, the core architecture, as I said, so built on transformer decoders. So and so they've sort of, because of the size of the amount of training that they have to do, they've used Google's TPUs, and it's not just within trainings like one location. They've used like distributed training, and they're going to bit of depth in the report discuss how this is being done. Some of these like also like quite new to me as well. So I need to go and read the papers that sort of explain these methods. In the next slide, hopefully I have some content on that. So on how the training has been done, and it's really interesting. If you are coming from a probably mechanical engineering, electronics engineering background, that'd be really interesting to understand how the fault tolerance and how you can efficiently train, especially if certain nodes of the distributed training sort of breaks down. How do you sort of recover from that? So all this information is provided in the reference literature in the paper. So that's really cool. Also, uh, so Gemini models state they do 32K context length. So it basically means you can provide up to 32K tokens, the size of the content when you ask questions, do queries, etc. So I think, for example, I think the largest I've seen publicly available is like Claude, probably 100K or 200K. But the issue is with that is that it's good when you want to like process large documents, but the more you sort of expand, if you the content that you're trying to extract from a document that's like below, like at the last end of the longer document, you the performance sort of reduces. So I think Google has sort of evaluated that through Gemini with sort of checking what's sort of the ideal context length, and shown that the 2K has been effective for uh, within the Gemini model sort of ecosystem. So I think that's the limitation, or maybe it could be the optimal sort of size that they have. And they also use efficient attention mechanism. Um, so, st- so they've used a method called multi-query attention. They've provided the paper to read about that as well. So switching from sort of multi-headed attention to multi-query attention, which is to improve uh, the efficiency from the decoder's point of view, because they're using sort of the decoder side of the transformer in the architecture. So that's what they're providing the paper, but it's got a lot of reference that we can go and read and sort of expand on the knowledge on that. Um, so some of the key features, like with the training side of things, is that um, so they've used, like as I said, multimodal input. So like text, image, audio, and video. So they've used some of their previous work, papers like Flamingo, Coca, and I think it's Pali how it's pronounced. So these are all when you have like text and images together. How do you encode this so that it makes sense uh, to the transformer? So that's so these papers are publicly available, so you can read. They have a bit of in-depth explanations on how this is done. So the tokenizations, etc. So it's gives you an intuition to understand how Gemini has done the work. So I think highly recommend like at least reading one of these papers to understand how the visual encoding has been done, um, where you convert text images to tokens, whether the transform understands. And yeah, so as I said, handles long text inputs effectively, 32K uh, window context length with effective sort of understanding, even though it's the information that you need at like the bottom of the sort of the document. So other the interesting thing is that direct audio ingestion um, can process 16 kilohertz audio signals. So what it means, like rather than directly converting the audio to some sort of a token, they've used universal speech model feature. So they uh, sort of chunk the audio into these meaningful chunks, and then use that to sort of convert that. I haven't read the paper Universal Speech Model, so but that was my understanding on how they've done the encoding. So that in that way they've done quite a lot of interesting tweaks when you sort of encode this information. So in that way, you sort of try to capture the most important information without just dropping them off during the conversion process, whether it's input from audio or video, etc. And the other thing is multimodal output. So you can actually get results as um, sort of images and text. I'm not sure if they can directly do video yet, but how they have done, sort of use sort of uh, create the model, they can sort of create sequential images. So I think whether to they have the feature to stitch that together, not sure, but I think quite capable of doing that if so if not done now, probably in the future. So yeah, this is the sort of section about training infrastructure. As I said, so they've done like use the TPU accelerators, so across multiple data centers. So initially, I think with models like Palm, they've done like training maybe few data centers, but for Gemini, it seems they have just go above and beyond with what they have, try to connect a lot of data centers. So and as the paper says, like connecting these kind of multiple data centers is great for efficiency and doing a lot of cycles of training. But sorry, but it also sort of creates uh, quite a lot of uh, areas that the hardware could fail or the processing could fail. So they have to sort of come up with new infrastructure sort of algorithms to handle these problems. Like so, one of the examples they say is like they've used superpods, which is sort of a version of TPUs that can automatically reconfigure in case of failure. So that's a really interesting paper to read. So do check it out. And also, so they're simple sort of libraries like JAX that we use for data like to train uh, to have this training done parallelly. And also they've done sort of, as I said, like if there's sort of a failure somewhere to get the sort of latest version of the model train. They have created multiple redundancies. Um, so copies of the model train version of that model train, so you can sort of recover quickly if there's something fail. So there's another concept I read called silent data corruption. So it's basically what I understood is that um, because how large this training is, uh, you tend to have problems in the training that could happen due to multiple reasons. It could be hardware failure, it could be issue with the data. So, but you would necessarily know that there's a problem because the you wouldn't um, yeah, it's too big to sort of have sort of a notification saying there's a problem. So they've done like scanning and replays to identify these like different algorithms, but paper doesn't like go into detail on this actually. So just something that they've mentioned in high level. that they have handled these kind of problems as well. Also mentioned the deterministic infrastructure, so they can like do root cause analysis even before certain problems could arise, deterministic problems, not like stuff that happens randomly. So yeah, so this is an interesting section of the paper. So yeah, so it's something I highly recommend that you read when you got some time. Um, cool. So training data set that I've used, I think it's very high level still. They say, okay, they've used multimodal and multilingual content from web documents. Doesn't say what web documents, books, code, etc. So, so that's a problem with this paper. Like, I mean, on a high level, they say use this stuff. It's enough to understand, but what type of data? Where do they you? Where do what are the sources? Those information is not provided. So that's a bit of a problem with the report. But as you seen in the architecture, we they've used content that is like merged together, audio, video, images, etc. So also mentioned they've used sentence piece tokenizer when processing textual data. Um, so and they've done multiple quality filters to sort of remove harmful content at the data level, like heuristic rules, model-based classifiers to identify if there's like harmful content. And also later in the paper they discuss how they try to identify if there are harmful content in the model by creating like custom queries to get the model to get responses for harmful queries. So and then if it's found out, you can put guardrails to reduce this harmful content. So that's the sort of the section about training data set. As I expected, it is not in depth. The paper, most of the stuff that they have focused on was on evaluation. So that's a quite a lot of on that with examples as well. So yeah. Um, so before maybe I jump into evaluations, just because it's a bit of a um, quite a lot of charts, etc. Feel free to put any questions if you have unclear things. I'll try my best to explain if that's something um, in my knowledge. So cool. I assume either you understood everything or yeah, yeah, doesn't make much sense. But yeah, I think I'll go to the text evaluation. So evaluation they've done in different levels like text, then video, like multimodal aspect, and like the different multilingual aspects, etc. So I've taken some sort of charts out of the paper just to sort of discuss. So this is one of the they on the DeepMind's website. You see these as well. Um, so I think what they've done is that these are like academic benchmarks. So then you have sort of a large language model. You try to benchmark against these sort of data sets in like mostly these are um, like prompt answers, etc. So that you expect the model to sort of give correct answers. So MMLU, which is multiple choice questions, that's across 57 subjects. I think this is the one that uh, that they managed to beat human level performance, Gemini Ultra, 90.04, where human level was around 88 something. Um, so it has done better than GPT-4 and like obviously most of the other models. So we have to be a bit careful comparing these because these are Google reported information. And as you can see, there are quite a lot of nuance to this testing. Like it's not comparing like apples and to apples. It's like apples and oranges. So if you look at this, like so like COT, I think chain of thought, yeah, chain of thought prompting they've done, and then GPT 3.5, it's 5 shot. Um, so I'm not going into detail with like chain of thought prompting here. So, but uh, the way they've done is you can't necessarily come. Yeah, Jacob, yes, that's correct. So, like 0 shot means like no examples given. Like 5 shots mean 5 examples given. 4 shots mean 4 examples given. So that's what it means. So and yeah, so there are quite a lot of benchmarks like for school mathematics, and then uh, I'm also not aware of all these actually. So, for example, Python code tasks, natural to code. So this is an interesting one. So the thing with this model is that even these benchmarks can be trained into the model if it is public. So this natural to code is, I think, one of those sort of benchmark um, benchmark that is not integrated in most of the models. So this is like held out model, held out sort of a question benchmark data set that you have separately, and you can use that to actually, when you have the model, to test how it's performing. So I think even GPT 4 hasn't used that for training either. So you can actually have a good understanding, a good comparison, given that, like, as you can see, it's 0 shot, everything's 0 shot. But I think given that it's done through API means probably might have been done by Google itself, not a self-reported value coming from a cheap OpenAI's sort of documents. So yeah. So likewise, you have few benchmarks here. Do check them out. So yeah. Um, so yeah, so they've also sort of evaluated. Yeah. So they also evaluated sort of capabilities across different models that in their own family of models: factuality, long context, math science, summarization, reasoning, multilinguality. So the meaning of that is exactly what the word says. So maybe long context is like how effectively can the model um, sort of get right answers depending on the length of the context. So I think that's the maybe one that requires explanation. Factuality is like how factually correct the model performs for, let's say, known set of questions and answers. And these are the sort of domains: math, science, summarization. And the data set is normalized to, I think, Pro. Yeah, normalized by the Pro model. So as you can see, normalized Pro model, its maximum is 1. So everything is adjusted according to the Pro model, which is publicly available actually. So Pro model is like fairly like comparatively closer to Ultra, but there's a huge difference between Nano 1 and Nano 2, obviously, because those are very smaller models. So that's the main reason. Yeah. Also, I because it's normalized, it might be a bit yeah, because it's comparing against specific bar of the chart. So yeah, it's ideal if you had the exact numbers, like, but it's sort of a custom, like a formatted version of the actual numbers. So, but it's what we have at the moment. Okay. So this is another test I've done for the Gemini Nano. Uh, this normalization of 1 in this. Yeah. So I mean, just to quickly explain, my understanding is that the the these are the performance ratings. Like, the higher the performance, the better, and it means yeah, exactly. So everything else is the values are sort of adjusted uh, we alongside pro results being 1. So If so, that's the sort of the benchmark that they've set. So everything is compared with Pro. So it's like normalized with the value that Pro got. So that's what they've done. So that's what my understanding is, that what they have done in this situation. So it compared against Pro, the other models that they have. Yeah. I hope that was clear. Yeah. So this is another sort of evaluation that they've done on the Nano. So I wouldn't go into detail much because I think this is another chart, another benchmark. Uh, and apart from a few other places, Google's models have done really well. So there's nothing much to sort of explore here, but I think it's really interesting how they have done. Like there's quite a lot of in detail evaluation. It's really interesting, and different kinds of evaluation mechanism is there. So that's why I think everybody should read the paper afterwards. So yeah. So this is what they've done is like multilinguality, like how well the model is able to translate different languages, like languages that we speak, and like they've sort of so this is like a benchmark sort of data set, and you have um, high resource, mid resource out of English into English. So I think what this means is you have different languages with limited resources, etc. So how well the model is doing for different kinds of languages or domains of the language, and how well it's performing. So I think higher the value, the better in this case. And except for this one, GPT-4, uh, the Gemini Ultra has performed better. So yeah, so there are a few scenarios where GPT-4 has done well, but most of the case it's Gemini Ultra being the um, the top model in most of these evaluations. Yeah, this is a set of evaluations for maths and summarizations. They've done 8 shot with 8 examples, and then 3 shot 3 examples for different sort of benchmark evaluation sets. Yeah, I think this Wikilingua one, I think Palm 2 has done well compared to others. So the Palm is the Google's previous model, and so yeah, there are scenarios that these models might not perform the best sometimes, but yeah. So this is the thing I spoke earlier about, like context length. Context length, as I said, is basically like what's the size of the uh, like whether it's a document or images, what's the length of the context that you can provide. So 32K is what I've seen is where you have like ideally uh, factually correct retrievals, etc., from the context. So they've done this test, and yeah, as you can see, it's reducing a lot. So higher the value, the better. Uh, so so what this means is like they have placed, um, let's say if you're looking for an answer in the document, that they've placed that specific content at the beginning, somewhere in the middle, and somewhere down the like last bit of the context. Still, it was managed to like get the results, but accuracy has reduced, I think. And Pro has actually performed better when the context length, the the information that we need in the bottom of the context. So yeah, it's some, I think, bit of minor details for us to understand um, what how well these models perform when the information is different places of the context that we want to evaluate. Yeah. So this is another evaluation that they've done. So they've done is they've used the same prompt and given that to Palm 2, and then another um, same prompt was given to Gemini Pro. And then the results that you get from the model was evaluated using a blind evaluation. So you wouldn't know from which model is giving that result. So you you wouldn't have any kind of bias to it. So if you are like If you know what it is, you tend to have bias, right? Like, so to avoid that, is a blind studies. So you compare this against for creativity, instruction following, and safety. So in all three, um, uh, Gemini Pro has performed better. So if you got values above 50% here, I think like 65% of the time, um, the people like humans evaluated that Gemini Pro has done well compared to Palm 2. Um, so yeah, they haven't done this with GPT. It's interesting because if the results were actually good, they would definitely put it here, but could be a time constraint because I think because everything is moving fast these days, you have to get things out. So whatever they have done at this point, the paper was written. I think um, uh, they might have published this. There was a question. Like, said actual humans evaluating blind evaluations. So yeah, that's what the paper says. So stating like you have humans who evaluate the results, and they sort of rate this or creativity and safety, etc. So that's what that was my understanding of the paper. So yeah, okay. So yeah, I think for multimodal reasoning capabilities, there was a example I want to show. So yeah, this is the paper. Let's see if I can take that up. Yeah, I think this is an interesting example. Um, Actually, this is not the one. Multimodal reasoning. Yeah, this is the one. So it's basically you. This is the prompt. What you have on the left side is a prompt. You've given um, like write a code to rearrange subplots in the figure using latest version of Matplotlib. Uh, like so, given some instructions here, like move the third paraboloid subplot on the top left. Um, top left, oh yeah, third one, top left, put the tangent functions on the bottom right, um, and the remaining two subplots, one of them should stay in its original position and the other one should fill the last spot. So yeah, this is a bit of a tricky question as well. You need to figure out like which one goes where. And yeah, so, and also um, then explain where each subplot should go in its new location. Last by the full code rearrange version with the original color scheme. So this is all we given the model, and with like it's able to sorry, is able to sort of decode that. So this is like evaluating like what's the current status, and then you do um, then the new places that the subplots will be, and then this is the code, and using that code, uh, they have generated um, these charts. So I think this is amazing. Like I haven't tested this code yet, um, but it's if this actually can do this, it's really cool. I feel, and if you look at the charts, it's yeah pretty much the same. I think yeah. So yeah, it's a really nice example of showing how powerful and useful this model can be. Yeah, there's another example for image generation. So you have like few examples as well, like it's a bit of a few shot. Yeah, it's just given some examples as well. Um, so so this is basically give me two ideas that I could do with these two colors. So this is like a um, I see blue and yellow yarn. You've given that, and then a blue. How about a cute blue cat? So you give an example. So we are sort of priming the model to get the answers we want. So you sort of give these instructions like as an example, and then you give the new prompt. So everything here is sort of asking the model, okay, follow what's been done before and create something new with this. And so it also follows the same structure. So I see green and pink yarn. So what you have here, and then given two examples. So these are two. how we can sort of uh, put text and images together and get results. So I think this is also really interesting. Yeah. So this is for audio understanding. So I think uh, two things that they have evaluated with the model: automatic speech recognition and automatic speech translation. So these these are like metrics that they've used. So lower the value for this WER is better. For BLEU, I think it's pronounced as blue. Higher the value, the better. So in it's just different standardized tasks that you can do to evaluate how well the model is capable of doing the speech recognition part. So um, yeah, I think compared to other models, Gemini Pro has performed better, and I think Gemini they haven't done Gemini Ultra for this one. Could be certain constraint with the timeline, I assume. Yeah. So this is another example that they view uh, sort of give an image and then audio input. So like what's the first step to make a veggie omelette with these ingredients? And then model response, crack the eggs into a bowl and whisk them. And then you provide this image with no caption. Thank you for the instructions. I started making my omelette. Does it look ready now? Um, so yeah, the first one, and then yeah, it looks like it's almost ready. You can flip it over to cook the other side. So likewise, you can have a conversation, and even in this one, um, without an image, just like audio, you ask why is it not ready? Like just being like very human. It is not ready because the eggs are still running. Just doing assumption, I think here, and then you send a photo like and ask what about now? It looks ready now. You can take it off the heat and serve it. So it's really interesting that you can have a conversation, and it stays like the context of the conversation, and you can even have follow up questions. So you can switch between modalities. I think this really speaks to the multimodal nature of the Gemini, where you can like do these kind of interactions as you would interact with a human. So yeah. So I think this is the last bit, like the responsible deployment bit. So so I think they've taken this um, 5-step approach that is governed through like the DeepMinds and Google sort of safety guidelines that they have for AI. So you use that and you do assessment, then policy evaluation to see how well the models are doing against the policy, and then you do certain mitigation mechanisms, and then only after that you deploy the model. Um, so impact assessments, you check for factuality, safety, security, and fairness, like how the model is doing. And then model policies like child safety, hate speech, fairness, things like that, very critical things. Um, and see if the model is adhering to like Google DeepMind's AI safety criteria. So this is provided in the paper. You can go and read in detail like what their sort of priorities and like sort of policies are. It also changes with time. So I've seen like multiple versions of the sort of guidelines. Um, yeah, the omelette picture was cool, definitely. Sorry, I saw a message in the chat. Comprehensive evaluations. So you do evaluations like development evaluation, assurance evaluations, and external evaluations. So they also do like get third parties to come and do evaluations like without any interference from Google to see how well the models are doing, and like especially adhering to like different countries safety requirements. Like for example, US, I think from a government level, you have these kind of sort of policies set in place, even in the UK now. So making sure that these external evaluations comply with those before moving forward. Um, so yeah, so they've gone into detail on this. I think it's really interesting to read. Um, and I think this is the one that they've done like in detail in this section, like mitigations. So they've talked. talked about three high-level sections for mitigations, like data curation. So they spoke about like how well you do to minimize any problems with the data set. You get high quality ethical data. Um, so if you get good data, that means trained model will be good as well. So also they make sure that when you get data, that it ensures fair compensation for workers, especially if there's a lot of um, problems, especially I think GPT, like OpenAI had this issue where they're paid unfairly for people who are doing labeling, etc., in third world countries, etc. So, um, so they make sure that people are paid really well. I mean, fair compensation, who are doing data curation, labeling, etc. So I think, um, so they highlight that specific aspect, not just the content wise, but also how the content was sourced. And then instruction tuning. So you make sure through you structure the reward model like the reinforcement learning models in a way that it sort of um, uh, promotes safe and uh, no harm is done through the results that's coming from the model. So and also no hallucinations, etc. Um, and then factuality. So Gemini focus on three key behaviors: attribution, closed book response generation, and hedging. So what this means is like, if I'm not mistaken, attribution is you ask a question in the context you have the information, and if the model can perform, um, get the right answer from the context, the prompt itself. So for example, if you ask, I have like, uh, you give your personal information and ask a question on that, and if you can answer properly, that's awesome, that works. The second part is closed book response. That means uh, you assume like, um, this is general knowledge, like for example, like when was Barack Obama was president of US, things like that. I think that was one of the examples. So you ask questions like that, and the model should be able to get that information correctly. And hedging is that, my understanding is, when you don't know an answer to something, it doesn't just hallucinate and like blurt out something wrong. It will mention that, okay, I don't understand, or I don't know enough information to give you an answer. So that's what. So you incorporate certain um, hedging aspect to the response. So you evaluate that. And yeah, so you have different um, different metrics to evaluate this as well. And yeah, so they have evaluated Gemini Pro in two levels: one with these mitigation mechanism applied, or after the mitigation mechanisms are applied, and like, so that's, they've done a comparison. So yeah, this is really, I think, comprehensive work from Google's side to make sure that these models are um, responsibly and safely deployed. Yeah, this is the paper. Probably, I think it was on the event link as well. So yeah, this is the end of the session. I think, yeah, cool. So yeah, feel free to ask questions. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question that um, that was interesting because I actually kind of came late, but was there any metrics on the translation, like performance of Gemini?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. There was actually. I think. Let me share my screen again.
Yeah, because right now I think ChatGPT is like really bad at translating.
Oh, is it? Is it? So it was under, I think, machine translation. Yeah, this one. So this one, I think, it's performing slightly, but actually,
Okay.
the translations.
Yeah, it's
So
still
yeah,
pretty bad then. I see.
yeah, because the other thing is like, I think Gemini Ultra is not available still. I think Gemini Pro is available. So comparatively to these ratings, GPT-4 might still be the
Best.
um, yeah, exactly. That's weird. But
I
yeah, I
think
think
GPT 3.5 is bad, Michael. I think that maybe that's what
Okay.
you're referring to.
Yeah. GPT 3 is pretty bad. So,
yeah, fair enough. Yeah, cool.
Actually, GPT-4 is pretty cool. When Ashika was showing that example about that image with the eggs and the omelet,
Yeah.
I've had a similar conversation in Chat GPT-4
Okay.
on the Chat GPT Pro version,
Yeah.
and it's actually it does a pretty good job. It kind of combines Dolly with the Chat GPT
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
UI and gives responses, but it's improved pretty well in the last 3-4 months.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I played around with GPT as well. It's pretty cool. I think it's a bit hard to compare these models because all these like results are mostly coming from the companies themselves. So they are a bit sometimes there are bits omitted, like when you present these results, so you would know like how the evaluation was done. Like let's say if it's one shot or three shot, whatever. So, but yeah, but overall, I think both these like most of these models are really good. I think depending on the use case, as long as you pick the right model. So yeah, it's a really interesting time to work in this field, I think.
I also have another question.
Yeah,
Although I don't want to kind of hoard the question time. Um,
no,
so there's a question about portability, and I don't actually know that much about like how you can put a model in like a phone or like a device. But can you talk a little bit about that? About how um, I feel like I had a better formulation in my head, but what are the challenges of having a model that's kind of living, right? That can learn. That's like, what are the hardware components that you need in order to make these models portable?
yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think uh, there are two sides to this question. Like what, like first you have to decide whether how fast you need to get inference, whether it's like uh, within milliseconds, then ideally you need to have that model on device. So then you, if that's the path that you're taking, then you need to figure out, okay, computation power of the device and the storage. So I think so, and the more you reduce and how these models are built, like size is a huge factor. Like more you reduce the size, unless you figure out like a smart mechanism to like get accurate results, it's going to reduce accuracy depending on the size. So that's sort of a trade-off that you have to have, like speed versus accuracy. So
Yeah.
if you can like don't mind maybe a second or couple of seconds delay for your results, and maybe you can like code it to API, right? Like you use like GPT API or like Google's Gemini through the API, and you try to access that. So yeah, so I think I've done some research on this probably 6-7 years ago, before large language models came, like on machine learning models. So you can um, s- strip the larger model into smaller size model, depending on what the specific use case that you have. So depending on that, you can sort of adjust the weights, etc. If you know really well in advance the use case, so you sort of fine tune the model to this use case and dropping other parts that is not needed. So that's one way you can sort of reduce the size much further, but also maintaining accuracy. So that's I haven't seen a lot of papers doing that with LLMs yet, but I think with open source LLMs coming into play, I think people would play around doing this kind of very specific training for use cases that can run on wearable devices. So yeah,
Yeah, it was interesting because the image with the omelet was it kind of blew my mind because I was like, the first use case was not actually the phone that I thought of, right? It was like a robot,
yeah,
a robot
yeah,
brain. So
yeah,
it's like, but there's a lot of hardware components that drives the actual mechanics. So it's going to compete against the brain, right? So I was
yeah,
just thinking about the portability of it and everything.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think like LLMs, I mean, multimodal models. with robots. I think that's going to be fun, scary as well. But yeah, it's going to be yeah, looking at how they can learn, just interacting with the world. Plus, I think there was a interesting paper. I don't know if somebody did a session on this actually, where you simulate a robot within a simulated environment, and you get the robot to learn through that environment, and then you bring that weights to the real world, and then you
Yeah.
get the robot to interact.
Yeah,
So
I saw that with NVIDIA doing a lot of training in virtual
yeah,
reality. Yeah, that's just fascinating.
yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, there was a yeah, exactly. Cool. Yeah, we got like 1 minute of standard time we allocated. Like, if you guys have any questions, happy to take them. Or suggestions, like, or the next paper that you want us to read. I think that's the next thing. Also, sorry, I should have stopped recording actually, but I'll stop now.